Good afternoon again, everyone. I'm Mary Morgan with Heading Home of South Central Indiana. For those of you who are not familiar with our organization, we are working on regional long-term system changes that will improve housing security for residents in Morgan, Monroe, Lawrence, Owen, Greene, and Martin counties. So we are excited to host this event today. We are thrilled to partner with the City of Bloomington and the Bloomington Housing Authority to tell you everything you will need to know about the inspection process for those organizations. I first want to give a big thank you to our Landlord Engagement Task Force who helped plan this event. Everybody who is part of that. Nobody here is part, oh yeah, Stephanie and Jessica and Jennifer. Let's give them a round of applause. Yay, thank you. Thank you to our friends at CATS for recording this event so that others who couldn't make it today will be able to tap the wisdom that you're about to hear. I would like to also point out that there are many resources on the table outside of this room. So we hope you'll pick some of those up that will give you some information that will help you with tenants and other things that will make your process of being our property partners so much more easy, we hope. All right, well, without further ado, I am thrilled to introduce our first speaker, Jessica Craig with the Bloomington Housing Authority. Jessica. Hello.
Yeah, hold it. So hi, my name is Jessica Craig, and I am going to talk with you a little bit today about the lease-up process with housing choice vouchers, what that typically looks like with BHA, as well as our payment standards, and then I'll be passing the mic off to George Snyder, our inspector, to go through the HQS, that's the Housing Quality Standards. Before we get started here today, I would like to make a personal note that Daniel Herman, our HCV program manager, was scheduled to do this and is sick, and I'm filling in last minute. So if it seems like I'm fumbling, that is why. Thanks. I'm a little nervous. Okay. So, hi, welcome. This is our presentation. So, prior to inspecting the unit and approving a proposed tenancy, there are a few things that need to happen before a renter can move into their unit. So the owner and the family must submit a completed request for tenancy approval. That's the RTA. A lot of times this is simply going to be referred to as someone's voucher paperwork. So somebody might approach you and say that, like, oh, hey, I'm with Section 8, this is my voucher. Once you receive that paperwork, you would complete it and return it back to us, and that is what indicates that you would like to utilize the voucher at that house. So this form is provided to eligible families. They receive this at their Section 8 briefing. Oh, excuse me. And then it contains important information about the rental unit as selected by the family, which is going to include things like the unit address, the number of bedrooms that are in the unit, what type of structure, so is it a single family home or a duplex or something like an apartment complex, the year that it was constructed, the utilities that are included in the rent, if any, and the requested date, beginning date of the lease. Something to note with this is that for new vouchers or for new leases, BHA does move-ins on the 1st and the 15th of the month. So here we have a copy of what that RTA form would typically look like. It's pretty straightforward, and so it should be information that you should hopefully have readily available about the unit. All right, so first things first. So prior to being able to approve a unit, BHA, oh, excuse me, sorry, I keep hitting the wrong button. BHA needs to ensure that the residence meets our housing quality standards. So we want to make sure that the home is safe and habitable for someone to be living in. We want to make sure that it meets affordability. So the share of the rent to be paid by the family should not exceed 40% of their monthly adjusted income. The rent to be charged by the owner for the unit must be reasonable. And the unit qualifies as an eligible unit. So some examples of ineligible units would be nursing homes, board and care homes, nursing, medical, psychiatric facilities, college or other school dormitories. And or a unit that is occupied by the owner. So if you own a home, you wouldn't be able to rent out a spare bedroom and utilize a voucher for that space. So what is rent reasonableness? HUD regulations defined a reasonable rent as one that does not exceed the rent charge for comparable unassisted units in the same area. So typically we would be looking at this unit. So let's say that it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house on the north side of town. We are going to be looking for other 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses on the north side of town within that area to determine if the rent that's being charged for this unit is comparable for that. So HUD requires that owners do not charge more for assisted units than compared to unassisted units on the premises. So if, let's say this is an apartment complex, you wouldn't be able to charge more for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath unit that's receiving a voucher than a 1-bedroom, 1-bath unit that's not receiving a voucher. So if you know that, BHA can go up to, let's say $1,100 a month, and your typical unit is going to be $800, you can't bump that up to $1,100 a month because you know that we're willing to pay it. And then when are rent reasonableness determinations required? So this is going to be at initial occupancy. So during the initial lease-up process, before the tenant moves into that unit, we would have to determine that it's reasonable in order to approve it. When the owner requests a rent adjustment, which I believe can be annual? It can be more than annual. So as needed, if you request an adjustment from BHA, then we would determine reasonableness at that point. And then if there is a 10% decrease in the fair market rent, which we'll get to here in a moment. So how is comparability established? So HUD requires that public housing authorities take into consideration the following factors when determining rent comparability. So this is going to be the location and age of the home, the unit size, including the number of rooms and square footage, the type of unit, so if it's a single family home, a duplex, low rise, high rise, etc. The amenities, services, and utilities included in the rent, if there are any. And then, excuse me, that's it. And then in determining affordability, we're also looking at our payment standards. So the payment standard is the maximum subsidy a family can receive each month as determined by HUD. So this is going to include their rent plus the tenant paid utilities. So typically affordability or a payment standard is going to be set between 90 and 110% of the fair market rent that is published by HUD. This is something that is updated annually. You can access it for your region to see what the fair market rents are considered. And then BHA actually has a waiver from HUD that allows us to increase our payment standards up to 120%. This is just due to the fact that Monroe County as a whole is just a very expensive area to live compared to the rest of Indiana. So here we have an example of what our current 2024 payment standards are. So you can see for an efficiency unit for rent and utilities combined, that can go up to $1,017, or a 1-bedroom, $1,174, so on and so forth. So when we compare this to fair market rent, fair market rent, it's an estimate of the gross rent. So that's going to be the rent and the utilities combined for your region. So it says FMR represents the cost to rent a moderately priced dwelling unit in the local housing market. So this is calculated by HUD and distributed annually. And it's typically calculated based on the 40th percentile of what they're seeing in that region. So for Monroe County, you can see what the current fair market rents are considered for 2024 and then moving into the year 2025. So we can see that for 2025, that amount is actually increasing. So it looks like there's about a 13% increase for 0-bedroom or efficiency units, 10% for 1-bedrooms, and typically I think that tends to trend upward each year, especially for our area. So here we have an example of how we compare compared to just other regions in the state. As you can see, Bloomington specifically is one of the more expensive markets compared to some other comparable regions. And then if you are a landlord who's not currently working with the Section 8 program, we would love to have you. And these are just some steps that you would take in just the process of getting leased up with a new tenant. So first thing you would want to do is contact Daniel Harmon, the HCV program manager, and you would set up an orientation with him where he's going to go through the program with you, talk a little bit about fair housing that goes along with that, and just make sure that there are no questions about how the HCV program works. And then from there, if you're not already advertising your unit, you want to get it out there and make sure the applicants are aware that it's available. If someone applies to your unit, the same way you would do a tenant screening for anyone who applies, you would do the same thing for a Section 8 recipient. There really isn't a difference there, and it's up to you to determine if you would like to rent to that person or not. So if they're not, if they don't typically meet your application criteria or those standards, you're able to deny them. We do have a program called the Landlord Risk Mitigation Fund, however, that can encourage a landlord to maybe rent to someone who wouldn't typically pass that criteria. If you have questions about it, feel free to follow up with me after this presentation. And then, so once the applicant applies, you say okay, cool, I'm gonna rent to you. You fill out that RTA paperwork and return it back into us. At that point, it would trigger us to schedule an inspection to complete the paperwork to determine the rent reasonableness and ensure that that unit is affordable and would fall within our payment standards. So complete it, sign it, turn it in, we review it, and then George here will schedule an inspection with you. So once the unit passes inspection, we're good to go. You can execute that lease signing, the tenant can move in, and then at that point is when BHA would begin to initiate the HAP payments. So that's housing assistance payment, and it would just be the portion of rent that BHA pays on behalf of the tenant. All right, so I'm going to pass this off to George Steiner to discuss a little bit more about inspections. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm George. All right. I'm also a little nervous. It's been about 20 years since I've done a presentation like this, okay? So with these are the numbers of inspections that we've done over the last couple of years. You can see I'm a pretty busy guy for the most part. So, oh, I think I hit the wrong button again. All right, there we go. So yeah, and I mean, we're on track to hit probably another 1,700 or 1,800 this year as well. So this includes my move-in inspections and my annual and any concern inspections that a landlord or a tenant will request. All right, housing quality standards. Housing quality standards are a set of minimum criteria for the health and safety of program participants in the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Some items that are considered tenant preferences in HQS include cosmetic condition. So if I come in and there's a bit of smudge or dirt on the wall, heck, even if there's a little graffiti on the wall, technically that's considered a cosmetic condition, and that is up to the tenant to decide whether or not that is acceptable. That is not something I decide on my inspections, okay? While the unit must have the required sanitary facilities, the family decides if the cosmetic condition is acceptable. Same with things like microwave. Microwave can be substituted for a oven or stove if the tenant agrees, and that same microwave is the only source of cooking, like a stove or an oven, for the entire property. It has to have a standard. You have to have the same options available for each unit on your property. HUD's performance and acceptability standards. HUD's for the HCV assisted housing are provided in 24 CFR 982.401. These standards cover the following areas: sanitary facilities, food preparation and refuse disposal, space and security, thermal environment, illumination and electricity, structure and materials, interior air quality, water supply, lead-based paint, access, site and neighborhood, and sanitary condition. Smoke detectors, that's about it. All right. For sanitary facilities, the dwelling must include sanitary facilities within the unit, no outhouses or anything like that. The sanitary facilities must be usable in privacy and must be in proper operating condition and adequate for personal cleanliness and disposal of human waste. All worn or cracked toilet seats and tank lids must be replaced, and the tank must fit properly. Sorry, tank lid. A tenant preference, however, is the family may determine the adequacy of the cosmetic conditions and quality of the sanitary facilities, including the size of the lavatory, tub, or shower, the location of the sanitary facilities within the unit. So, it could be in the basement. If they're okay with that, that's fine with us, okay? The adequacy of the water heater, whether or not the water heater is large enough, is what that essentially means. Food preparation and refuse disposal. The dwelling unit must have space and equipment suitable for the family to store, prepare, and serve food in a sanitary manner. Tenant preferences could be the family selects the size and type of equipment it finds acceptable. So if you want to have one of those, if you're okay with a little bitty stove, that's okay. If you're okay with the microwave, that's okay, as long as it's standard across the other units and the tenant is okay with the size of the stove, oven, or preparation space. The adequacy of the amount and type of storage space, the cosmetic conditions of all equipment, and the size and location of the kitchen are all determined by the family. Space and security. The dwelling unit must provide adequate space and security for the family. This includes having at least one bedroom or living sleeping room for each 2 persons. Window sashes must be in good condition and properly fitted to window frame. Windows and doors must be weather stripped as needed to ensure a weather-tight seal. Window screens are required for all operable windows and must be in good condition. Tenant preferences. The family may determine the adequacy of room sizes and room locations within reason. I think there's a minimum room requirement in Monroe County for like 82 square feet or 78 square feet. It's one of those two. That includes a closet. The family is also responsible for deciding the acceptability of the type of door and window locks, except for bolt, chain, and double-sided locks. Those are prohibited. So you can't have a bolt lock for a door or window. You can't have a chain lock as the only lock for a door or window. And double-keyed deadbolts are expressly prohibited by HUD unless you have a note from like a doctor, say something that states that you need it in case you have like a child with a disability as an escape risk or something along those lines. We can make an exception in that case. So here's some examples of inadequate space and security. You see the light coming in under the door. Got to have properly sealed doors. You got to have proper weather stripping. Same on that one. The thermal environment, the unit must have a safe system for heating the dwelling unit. The heating temperature must be capable of maintaining an interior temperature of 65 degrees Fahrenheit between October 1st and May 1st. Dwelling units must not contain unvented room heaters that burn gas, oil, or kerosene. Portable electric room heaters are not acceptable as a primary source of heat. But say you have a tenant whose heat goes out and you can't get somebody out to fix it immediately, you can provide them with a space heater as long as it's electric, or one of those internal oil ones I think will work as well until you can get it properly fixed. The family may determine whether the amount of insulation, presence or absence of storm doors and windows and other energy conservation items are acceptable. Structure and materials, dwelling units must be structurally sound. Handrails required when 4 or more steps are present. Railings required when porches, balconies, and stoops are 30 inches or more off the ground. Elevator, if present, must be in working order. Manufactured homes must have proper tie-down devices capable of surviving wind loads common to the area. So it's a broken spindle, not appropriate. Dwelling units must be free of air pollutant levels that threaten the occupant's health, must be adequate air circulation in the units. Bathroom areas must have one, there we go. Bathroom areas must have at least one operable window or other adequate ventilation, such as an exhaust fan or something along those lines. Drop vents are also something we consider adequate. The sleeping rooms must have at least one window, and that window must open. If the window is designed to be open, it must be in proper working order. For the water supply, we've got the dwelling unit must be served by an approved public or private water supply that is sanitary and free from contamination. The plumbing fixtures and pipes must be free of leaks. Here's an example of a pipe that is not free of leaks and is not acceptable. For lead-based paints, LBP requirements apply to units built prior to 1978. Owners must disclose known lead-based paint hazards prior to lease execution, stabilize deteriorated paint surfaces, and conduct hazard reduction activities within 30 days when identified by the BHA. I am a certified lead inspector too, so it's some stuff I check on. Doesn't come up very often though. Notify tenants each time such an activity is performed. Maintain covered housing without deteriorated paint if there is a child under 6 in the family. Regardless of unit age, any exterior or interior surfaces with peeling or chipping paint must be scraped and painted with 2 coats of unleaded paint or other suitable material. Access, use, and maintenance of the unit must be possible without unauthorized use of other private properties. So you can't have to go through somebody else's unit to get to the unit, essentially. Building must provide an alternate means of exit in case of fire, so a window that's appropriately sized, a second door, something along those lines. Here is a unit where there is no secondary form of egress due to a bit of rubbish. Same here, can't freely and easily move through this unit. The site and neighborhood must be reasonably free from disturbing noises and reverberations, excessive trash or vermin, other dangers to the health, safety, and general welfare of the occupants. For sanitary conditions, the dwelling unit must be in sanitary condition, free of vermin and rodent infestation, must have adequate barriers to prevent infestation. Here is a picture of some bed bugs. This is gross. Smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. 1 sealed battery operated or hardwired smoke detector required on each level of the unit. Inside each bedroom, within 21 feet of any door to a bedroom measured along a path of travel. If mounted on ceiling, must be greater than 4 inches from the wall. If wall mounted, the top edge of the alarm must be between 4 and 7 inches from the ceiling. Carbon monoxide detectors required when unit contains a fuel burning appliance or fuel burning fireplace, like you've got a gas furnace, gas stove, something along those lines. Dwelling unit has an attached garage. Hazard and health safety. The unit interior and exterior common areas accessible to the family and the surrounding neighborhood must be free of hazards to the family's health and safety. No examples there. Life-threatening conditions. The following conditions are considered life-threatening and must be corrected within 24 hours. Any condition which jeopardizes security of the unit, so broken lock on the door jamb split or something along those lines. Windows don't lock properly, that's considered to jeopardize the security of the units. Major plumbing leaks, natural or LP gas or fuel oil leaks, any electrical problem or condition that could result in shock or fire, water leaking or ponding near any electrical device, absence of working heating system when outside temperature is below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, utilities not in service, including no running hot water. Conditions that present the imminent possibility of injury. So if you've got a window pane that's broken and you could get cut on that glass, that's considered a 24-hour fix. Doesn't mean you have to replace it in 24 hours. You just have to fix the situation within 24 hours and get the window replaced as soon as you can. Obstacles that prevent safe entrance or exit from the unit. The following conditions are considered life-threatening and must be, well, we got more of them, all right. Absence of functioning toilet in the unit, inoperable or missing smoke or carbon monoxide detectors, missing, damaged, discharged, overcharged, or expired fire extinguishers, gas, oil-fired water heater or heating, ventilation, or cooling system with missing, damaged, improper, or misaligned chimney venting, deteriorating paint in a pre-1978 unit that is occupied by a family with a child under 6 years of age. All right. Post-inspection, what to expect. Following a failed HQS inspection, BHA will send a notice of HQS deficiencies to the owner. Notice will list any deficiencies observed during the inspection. Notice will provide time frame for correcting deficiencies. 30 days for annual inspections, 10 days for initial inspections, that's the move-in inspections, and 24 hours for life-threatening issues. Notice will also be given via telephone and or email. I do my best to email everything out, okay? Once deficiencies have been corrected, it is the responsibility of the owner to notify BHA of completion. Extensions may be provided as appropriate. And soon we've got the Inspire standards going into effect. HUD hasn't changed their standards in over 20 years now, and they're changing a lot of things. Coming up next October is when they go into effect.
On the last one,
Yeah.
you had mentioned fire extinguishers.
Yes. So if you have an apartment building like you do, if you have a fire extinguisher in the hall,
Okay, so we don't have to provide that.
not each unit, as long as they're available in the hall, okay?
I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, sorry to interrupt.
So the national standards for the physical inspection of real estate are going into effect next October. In theory, they're supposed to have gone into effect this upcoming October, all right? What was that? 2025, yeah. There we go, scheduled to be implemented October 1st of 2025. Highlighted changes from HQS include expanded list of life-threatening deficiencies, remove site and neighborhood requirement for housing choice voucher, updates to thermal environment requirements, so there's going to be more of a requirement for like air conditioning and things like that. Carbon monoxide detector requirements, smoke detector requirements updated, updated inspection form. And that's what I got. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
At the very beginning, you showed a slide, I think it was you,
Yeah, yeah.
Can you expand on that in terms of reinspection?
Well, right now, unless it's a life-threatening issue or there has been shown to be a history of the same issues popping up again and again on a property, I take a verbal confirmation of repairs being complete. So if if it's the, let's go back to the broken window example. So if the window is broken all the way through, could potentially be a life-threatening issue, I will come back out and do a follow-up on something like that. If it's something like missing light bulbs, I'll take a verbal confirmation that's okay because that's not life-threatening, all right? So probably about 1 in every 20 inspections I do, I have to do a follow-up on. And it's just me over there. All right, anyone else? All right.
Thank you, George and Jessica. All right, we'll take a brief musical interlude if somebody wants to sing, so that any birthdays in the crowd today, as I get this next presentation up. There we go, technology at its best. All right, I would like to welcome our next speaker, John Hewitt from the City of Bloomington Hand Department.
If my stomach gurgles with the mic down here, I'm sorry. Hello. I was asked to come up and let you guys know how we do our inspections through the City of Bloomington Hand Department, so I threw this presentation together. Title 16 is often thought of as a safety code. A lot of people say, well, you do a safety code, you do a safety inspection on these properties. And while we are basically required to make sure that the place is safe, the actual code, see here, you see that I've quoted Title 16, Section 16.01.030, where it talks about ensuring public safety, but also the stability of the housing stock in the City of Bloomington and the character of the City of Bloomington. And then, it doubles up on safety. So before the inspection, we obviously want you to call and schedule and follow all the steps that we've got going on here. If you go to the city's website and go to the hand page for that website, we have a lot of different, what are they? Resources available, the pre-inspection addendum we have there that lists a lot of the things, all of the steps that we cover when we're doing these inspections. And so, excuse me, that went too fast for me. Yes, it is touch. A lot of the property owners that we've worked with over the years have had the idea to do a pre-inspection on their own to be prepared ahead of time so that there are less violations to deal with or an idea of what they're going to run into when we're on site with them. And then one of the other things that we do, if I see a tenant when I'm doing an inspection, I ask them what's broken in their unit. It's always a good idea to talk to the tenants and see, they're gonna hide things from you, aren't they, Chelsea? Yeah. With us, it's the opposite. They tell us everything, unless they forget. Now I gotta go back to the other view. All right. So obviously we want you to inform your tenants that we're going to be coming, allow time for them to get the place tidied up, etc. One of our biggest things is, of course, the smoke detectors that we run into. As George said in his presentation, there are requirements for where those smoke detectors are placed. HUD allows for 4 inches from the wall or the ceiling. The building codes that that our code, Title 16, refers to, sometimes quote the number 6 inches from the ceiling or wall and no more than 12 inches to the bottom of the smoke detector from the ceiling if it's wall mounted. So we also run into a lot of differences between when the building code in place when the property was built affects whether it's battery operated smoke detectors or hardwired smoke detectors, and a lot of that is date specific for the time when the property was built. So there, if you're in one property and we specify one thing, and then on a different property there might be a slight difference to that specification or the number of smoke detectors required by the inspector, those things are all dictated by the building code that is referred to by Title 16. Excuse me. As I said, we like to see tenants have a chance to tidy up before we come and show up. And if you check the smoke detectors, we won't be seeing this particular item again. So we like to hope that as you're arriving to do the inspection on a day that we're coming to help you out with an inspection, that you arrive early, make sure that the tenants are awake and dressed, and that, as I said, they have a chance to tidy up for us to be able to reach the windows and the electrical receptacles. During the inspection, one of the inspectors pointed this out to me. We like to have the landlord or the agent, whoever it is with us, stay with the inspector so that they see what we're seeing. We can point out, hey, it's this receptacle over here, what have you. It's specified for us that we aren't supposed to be in the units alone or walking around just for liability reasons. Again, ask questions, make notes, make sure that you provide the documents that we require. All of those things there on the slide. After the inspection, we're going to want you to make the repairs in a workmanlike manner, finish them completely and in a timely manner. See here we have some lovely electrical connections. We were amazed that someone thought that door would pass an inspection when there was a 2-inch space. Again, a way to notice that the job is not completed without paint, not really done in a workmanlike manner. And we've got a couple more slides of that nature. Flex seal. This isn't a glass bottom or a screen bottomed boat, but still not really workmanlike. As we talked about smoke detectors, when a house has hardwired interconnected smoke detectors, they must be maintained in that way. You don't get to just slap a battery operated smoke detector up there. Again, someone followed the shortest path. Yeah. So after you receive the report, that's important for us as part of our paperwork and our in-house procedures. We don't like to schedule the inspection until you've received a copy of the report and you're sure that you have all of the repairs that are needed. If we go over it with you at the inspection and everyone makes notes, that's a common occurrence. But even just a week and a half ago, someone called me and said, hey, this wasn't what he told me we were gonna inspect. And I said, but it was on the report that was mailed. So, we want you to make sure that you read the report, maybe make sure that the person doing the repairs has a copy of that same report, so that there's no discrepancy. Your processes obviously are for you, but this would help us. Yeah, let me make sure I'm not missing anything here down here in my notes. Yeah. Make sure the tenants know you're coming. We often will have to mark an inspection as a no-show if the tenants do not allow us access to the property because they haven't been properly warned. It's their home, basically, and we can't force our way in. So I like to remind folks of that. Paperwork, make sure you're sharing the paperwork that we require. We've got a move-in inspection that's needed, the occupancy affidavit, which we've had for a few years now, and furnace documentation, making sure that the gas-fired furnace is functioning correctly. Yeah, and then in the photo, we have a registration form. I know when people talk to us on the phone, we shorten that a lot in-house to reg form, but registration form is a very necessary part of our process, especially now with our newer software program that figures into a lot of the paperwork that we do in the office. All right. So we also conduct, aside from the inspection that we use to issue a permit, we conduct complaint inspections, and we do them often on behalf of the landlord as well as the tenants. Right now we have a complaint that we're working to schedule with a tenant that was in a condominium community where the property is a rental, or the unit is a rental, and neighbors and the HOA have requested a complaint inspection due to situations in the unit so we are actually contacting the landlord and the tenant saying that we are required to do an inspection. The deadlines, as it says here, normally 14 days. We can reduce that to 24 hours. In the case of cold weather, no heat, major electrical problems, and we do that, I don't know, maybe 10 times a year, give or take. But as I said, anyone can fill out a rental complaint under Title 16 if they have the ability to access the unit in some way, even visually, if there's a problem. We get complaints that we handle about everything from indoor furniture on front porches, and then also up to and including dead trees that are on rental properties that could cause someone injury or harm. We also do a few other types of inspections. Some of you guys, I'm sure, have run into them. If a unit has a fire, we like to verify that all the work has been completed and it's livable afterward. Permit upgrade inspections are just tied to building permits that have been issued by Monroe County. With those inspections, we make sure, again, that all the upgrades are translated into onto the permit. For instance, if someone adds a bedroom or a bedroom and a bathroom to a unit and remove a garage space, in doing that, we would need to change the number of bedrooms on our permit and things of that nature. We don't charge a fee for that. It's just a way of upgrading the information, and everyone's permit maintains a correct number of everything that's part of it. We do some tenant violation reports if, thinking back to the photo, the slides a few back where you couldn't reach the window, Kenny. So we would actually send the tenant a violation for that particular problem. I just mentioned him because he took that photo. In those cases, the tenant violation, we send them a report. The owner is CC'd with that report, allowed to be aware that it's going on, but we have basically made the tenant liable to make the repairs in this instance. So, and then we also have some properties that have home funds through HUD that we inspect, and we will be using the Inspire criteria at the point where those become required by HUD. Up to that point, we have been, in the past, given the opportunity to use our inspection process by HUD. It's been okayed by HUD that we use those criteria on units that fall under their payment umbrella. So, some of the things that we cite, I'm just going to give you an idea of some of the code citations that we use. Interior violations are required to be clean, structurally sound, and sanitary, no threat to public health. So the different code letters and numbers tell you the different code that we're citing in these particular cases. Here you see some other examples of workmanlike repairs. It is a spoon, Chelsea. It still turned the knob, you know, it let people in and out. You see some missing cabinets and door fronts, just a number of the things that we tend to see. More ideas of interior violations. BMC 1604060C basically relies to all the systems, the different systems in the house, electrical, plumbing, etc. Fire safety in the larger units that have sprinklers and/or alarm systems. Here you see some appliances. The tape was holding the refrigerator door shut. It wouldn't stay alone. And then on the other photo there, you see sort of a hybrid type plumbing system where you've got the temperature pressure relief valve on the water heater feeding into the condensate drain line from the furnace, sort of providing nowhere to go. So one of the things we run into often on complaint inspections also, but we see a lot of roach infestations and things like that when we're doing regular cycle inspections. So here are all the sort of the highlights of the extermination section in the code. It's supposed to be free of all pests when you rent the property out. In single-family homes, after 30 days, we are to take the tenant or hold the tenant responsible for the extermination. And the big thing here is that we just the hand department doesn't have the ability to dictate who's going to pay for that. That's going to be something that you and the tenants, or the tenants and the landlord, are going to have to figure out on their own, and how that works out. Title 16 doesn't have any ability to intervene. So we have some photos of roach infestation in a kitchen you can see there, and I'm not sure if that's Rocky down in the vent, but that was taken on an inspection. There was a raccoon in that vent system by one of our inspectors. When we get to the exterior, 16.04040 are all the exterior areas, not the structures themselves, but the property and the premises. The 16.04.050 A through G covers all the exterior of the structures themselves, roofs, decks, you name it, handrails, etc. Graffiti and mold are a couple of things that are under that heading. We often require people to do some power washing just to get the mold mildew off of, especially vinyl sided houses. They tend to show that more than some of the other types of homes. Here's an example of a handrail a stair that is in dire need of some work. And that roof there, I think someone bought a box of wood shingles and just stuffed them up there themselves in a manner, in a way of trying to get that to keep from leaking. That's been 10 or 15 years ago, I believe. here in town. A quick look at our fees, and here's where you see that I don't send the billings out. The no-show fee is incorrect on this slide. It is actually $50 instead of $75. I was hoping they'd give me the other $25. No, that didn't work. So as we get toward the end of the presentation here, one of the things that I hadn't covered was the appeals to this, to the code. We've got the 4 different types of appeals that are available under the Board of Housing Quality Appeals, and then the Monroe County Circuit Court. If you want to appeal a fee, the Board of Housing Quality Appeals does not have the ability, due to the municipal code, to handle that. And or if you go to the board for any of these other types of appeals and you're not satisfied, the remedy for that is through the Monroe County Circuit Court. Yeah, so if there is something that is covered by a building code that we call out on your property, whether that's a window that doesn't meet the requirement from the time when the building was built, or something that is where we're citing a code from the state of Indiana, that has to be appealed to the state, the Indiana Department of Homeland Security, specifically the Fire Prevention and Building Safety Commission. So that happens even to this day a couple times a year, where we've run across windows that don't meet, and people, rather than replace a window, are willing to spend the money to go to the board, or excuse me, the commission at the state, to get a variance to the building code. It's funny that how the building department for the state of Indiana falls under Department of Homeland Security. I remember talking to a young lady at one of the housing fairs, and she was trying to lease out a building that hadn't been built yet. They were building it, and this development had a pool on the roof of the building, and she said, "Our building is so cool, they had to take it to the Department of Homeland Security to get it checked out." And I said, well, I know every building gets checked out by the Department of Homeland Security here in Indiana. That's pretty much all that we've got, other than I know the agenda has time for questions after this presentation. So if anyone has any questions about what we've gone over, myself or George, I'm sure we would be willing to answer. Yes?
So how often do you inspect? I thought after so many inspections that they had a greater time gap in between.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't cover some of those things. I was more focused on the inspection than the rest of it, which I should have been more. Anyhow, the minimum rental permit by the city of Bloomington is 3 years. You automatically get that when you register and schedule an inspection. If at that inspection everything is done within the deadlines that are given. So we send the report out, you get 60 days. When you call us and schedule that, if it's before the 60 days have expired, we're gonna go out, do the reinspection. And if everything's done, we're gonna send you a bill. You'll have 30 days to make that payment, and you'll be able to bump up to a 4-year permit. 4 years later, you would be eligible to go to a 5-year permit. So just by following that same step and getting everything done before deadlines expire. And of course, you would have to schedule the inspection prior to the expiration of the existing permit. So all of those things fall together and allow you to work your way up to a 5-year permit. In the case of a brand new building that has all of the highest safety standards that the state of Indiana requires for a building, a brand new building would be eligible for a 5-year permit right off the bat, simply as a way of being satisfied with the safety and building standards at that time. But that's the general outline of how long the permits are. Yeah, Pete?
So you mentioned that there was a thing called a tenant violation.
Yes, sir.
Or a notice of violation to a tenant, something like that.
Correct.
Never had any experience with that, but if that were done by your office, then is that tenant liable for any penalties, fees? Is there any dollar?
We do not, yeah, to my knowledge, we have never charged a fee for that portion of the inspection. So you're paying, the landlord is paying an inspection and permit fee. It's one fee to cover the inspection and reinspection, and then we issue a permit. If during that inspection we notice a tenant with a problem, as part of getting the property into a livable space, and especially multiple unit properties, we are required by the code to make sure that the property is clean and sanitary, and that's most of what the tenant violation items are going to be. We run into more hoarding these days than we have in the past. Yes, really. I thought you said really? Oh, that's all right. We run into a little bit of that, but there certainly we've written some tenant violations for poor housekeeping in buildings that it affects multiple units, either through smell or through drawing bugs that need to be exterminated, and we've addressed that even recently. So it gives us another avenue where we can help a landlord try to achieve a cleaner unit without having to evict someone. Maybe gives the tenant a little bit more incentive to clean things up when it's not just the landlord saying this is a problem, when it's actually the city saying it's a problem. Yes?
You mentioned for like pest and extermination, no tenant should be moving into a unit with pests known by the apartment, right?
That's correct.
So what is kind of the resolution or process if the tenant does move in and the apartment's like, hey, just so you know, we're those roaches, we're gonna have an exterminator come next week?
John, can you repeat that question?
Yes. So part of my presentation covered the fact that moving into a unit, there should be no pests there when it is let to the tenant. The answer to that is, if, as you said in this hypothetical, if the landlord says, hey, we've noticed roaches, we're going to have someone do this extermination for you. We have run into a situation somewhat similar to that recently, a sublet. Someone moved in halfway through a lease season. They found roaches in their unit. They called us, we did a complaint inspection, verified that there was a problem there, and helped resolve that. In a situation where the landlord is aware and can provide us with documentation that they are actively exterminating, on a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly basis, whatever those parameters are. If we send them a notice of complaint inspection and they provide us with that documentation, normally that closes the complaint inspection unless the extermination efforts are not working. And we have at least one situation going on now where we are meeting an exterminator there on a scheduled basis to make sure that they are actually exterminating every unit, just to get this problem under control. You're welcome. Anything else? Hi, Mary.
Hi. Can you, and this is probably maybe for George too, talk about the main differences between the city inspection and the hand inspection? Or are they so similar that they're basically two inspections?
I'll take a quick stab at it. So I'm going to say the big difference between the two of them is the fact that HUD has money in the game. And so they are allowed, as a federal agency, they are allowed to actually make some rules that people at the city and the state level have to follow. So we are following a municipal code rule in our inspections, and it refers back to the state rules on how the building must be built and some of the other rules that the state has provided in the Indiana Administrative Guidelines or Guide. We also, as I said, refer to the state building code rules, and that's where we have to stop. So a lot of times we'll see something that maybe we would like to have fixed, but we don't have the building was built in '89 or something like that, and it doesn't meet current code requirements for smoke detectors or window size or something of that nature. Or if it was built before '83 and there's a bedroom window that's this high off the ground and, like this, like an old basement window. I can't make someone put a window in that room that meets current code because the general administrative rule says I can't just make them bring every house up to current code.
Whereas with HUD, it's more of using the window as an example, it is, could someone reasonably fit through this window in the case of a fire? We don't pull out our measuring tapes to determine how wide it is, how tall it is. We just make a reasonable assumption based upon the size of the little changes, little differences like that.
Correct. So HUD can create a rule that is either more or less restrictive than what I can enforce at state levels, yes.
Having done both, the one difference I can think of offhand is that, HAM does not require window screens.
Correct. Yes, we can't require window screens because they're not part of the building code. And while at a time in hands past, we followed a model code, the property maintenance code that was put out by the code councils that did require screens. The state of Indiana has said, the building code doesn't require screens, so you can't require screens, and some of those things. So those are where we run into differences between the two.
So I think the other big one might be fire extinguishers too.
Yes, we're no longer given the green light by the state of Indiana to require smoke or fire extinguishers.
Whereas at every HUD assisted unit, you have to have a fire extinguisher. And starting January 1st of this year, that fire extinguisher has to be inspected by a third-party inspector and tagged or replaced every year. That's part of the new International Fire Code that HUD is adopting, so. Oh, sorry. That's all I got.
Anything else?
Regarding, this is kind of for both of you, I know I work with a lot of people who have reported mold, and those types of issues. I know that's kind of a tricky situation for everyone to address. So can you tell me the way you guys address that, if you have any ability to take action?
Yes. For us, the question is mold. How do we address issues of mold? We get a number of complaints every year or quite often about mold, black mold, mold in units, people saying that they have a difficulty breathing, etc. There is no standard even in the United States, there's no standard for what is mold and how can it be enforced. The easiest thing that we can do is address water damage, because moisture is something that creates the ability for mold to grow. So even recently we've had a moisture detector in a moisture meter actually in the department that the inspectors can take on different inspections, but we've run into overlapping inspections recently. And so we've purchased more, and just about every one of the inspectors has their own moisture meter to be able to test all the areas around where the mold is seen or in the unit to see if we can help pinpoint the problem area and move forward with creating less mold in the houses.
Yeah, it's typically the same for us, more or less. Like if the number one thing I hear is I smell mold, and I can't do anything about a smell unless it's like an overwhelming situation, all right? Or there's a sign of water damage. I'm like, well, probably mold associated to the water damage in this instance. And mold in certain areas, we actually don't act on. We consider it a housekeeping thing. Like if it's in a bathroom, typically moist area, we tell them how to clean it up properly, okay? Because if you don't use your vents, if you don't open your window, you're gonna get mold in those areas. We consider that a tenant responsibility, typically, unless there's signs of an active leak. And if somebody's like, well, there's definitely mold here, I tell them, well, you have to get it tested by somebody, not us, all right? Because we don't do mold testing.
Yeah. You had your hand up back there?
Yeah, you guys, I know you mentioned Inspire, but do you expect Inspire to kind of make things more cohesive between CAN and BHA, or are you guys adopting parts of Inspire? Or?
So all of the inspectors and a couple more members of the staff at the hand department went to an Inspire training in July. So we all have received certificates in the mail or what have you for that. There's still going to be a difference simply because of the nature of having to adhere to HUD's requirements, which if someone were to come to the hand department and say, I have these 4 rental units and I want to take some money and do a rental rehab and update these 4 units and have a loan from the hand department to so that I can make my units better, they'd have to follow HUD's guidelines on what they charge for rent, and then we would have to inspect to that standard instead of to the Title 16 standard. Excuse me. So HUD can, as part of the program guidelines, they can say you must bring all of the smoke detectors up to the current requirement. Well, that current requirement meets Inspire. They'll say you have to bring other systems and other parts of the property up to meet the standard that HUD is going to require on those inspections, even if the house is older than what would be required under the building code. So that's kind of the major difference is a unit that has funding from HUD in it, so that you have to inspect it, is going to already meet or have met those guidelines, and they just have to maintain them. Is that covered for you, George?
Yeah, I mean, we are discussing too adopting more of hand standards as part of our personal local admin plan too. So we are slightly more in line as much as HUD will allow us to be.
Yeah.
You said that they require the mold to be tested. Does that cost fall on, or is it going to fall on the tenant and who?
No. Well, for us, if there's no definitive source of mold, then it falls on the tenant. And there are some. What was that? If we can't find a source of moisture or something like that, then we can't lay it on the landlord at all. So then that would become a tenant responsibility, and we usually guide them towards some home testing kits as a cheap alternative. They have a decent track record, so.
We, as far as mold testing goes, we have not required that as a normal course of action. There have been one or two cases where a tenant has paid for mold testing, and under previous directors, or at least under one of the previous directors of the hand department, when that mold testing information was given to us by the tenant, we required the landlord to, since they were aware of the problem, bring the property up to a point where that remediation met what the guidelines for that mold testing did. But that is not upheld by the way that Title 16 is written at this time. That was one of the things that the director felt, that since they were aware of the problem and how to fix it, that gave us the authority to at least require them to meet that threshold.
Can you remind us where people can find online resources for each of your inspections?
Yes, for us, bloomington.in.gov/hand. That'll get you to the hand department's webpage for all of the resources, paperwork, anything that you might need copies of for renting out anything.
And honestly, I never go to our website, so. VHAindiana.net. We have a full list of documents that we use for our inspections, and actually to get landlords signed up and everything too. So we have everything you need there, easy to download, so.
Let's give it up for John, George, and Jessica. Thank you all so much. And thanks for advancing the slide there, John. Thank you. I just want to speak for the moment. I know we have several service providers here, but I want to speak to the landlords and property managers in the room. You are such important partners for our work. You are housing people and changing their lives. And I don't want you to underestimate that. And I want you to know what an important part you are in making this community stronger. So let's applaud you. Thank you so much for the work that you do. I'd also like to invite you and everyone here and anyone who's watching on CATS to an event that Heading Home is hosting on Tuesday, September 24th. We are excited about the work that we've done with a national partner called Built for Zero. We've achieved some milestones, and we are going to celebrate them. We look forward to seeing you there. If you use that QR code, it'll take you to an Eventbrite where you can register. Again, it's on Tuesday next week from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at the Farr Center. And with that, one final thank you to all of you who've come today. One final thank you to our Landlord Engagement Task Force. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much.